The Galactic Council had very specific rules about weapons during diplomatic negotiations. After the incident on Proxima Station, where an overzealous Krathian ambassador had discharged a plasma rifle during a heated trade, projectile weapons of any kind were strictly forbidden within the negotiation chambers. James Riley read the regulations 3 times before the meeting, a slight grin spreading across his weathered face. The document was remarkably thorough. No firearms, no energy weapons, no explosive devices, no projectiles of any classification. But nowhere, absolutely nowhere, did it mention bladed weapons. "You're insane," Aliana muttered as she watched James strap another combat knife to his left shin. She was the diplomatic attaché assigned to the human delegation, a position she'd held for 2 years. In that time, she'd learned that humans had a particular talent for finding loopholes in galactic law. "The Council will never allow this." "The Council already allowed it," James replied, standing up and adjusting his formal jacket. Beneath the crisp diplomatic attire, he carried 47 knives of various sizes and purposes. Throwing knives lined his forearms. Boot knives sat in custom sheaths. A kukri hung at his hip alongside a Bowie knife. Ceramic blades designed to evade most scanners were tucked into hidden pockets throughout his clothing. "I submitted my equipment manifest this morning. Cleared it with 3 different legal offices. Not a single projectile among them." Aliana, whose species, the Velhari, had evolved past physical conflict millennia ago, felt her secondary heart flutter with anxiety.
"James, this negotiation is crucial."
"The Xanth Collective controls 17 star systems humanity needs for the expansion corridor. If you antagonize them—" "I'm not going to antagonize them," James interrupted, his tone suddenly serious. "I'm going to remind them why they should negotiate in good faith. The negotiation chamber was a masterpiece of neutral architecture, designed to make no species feel advantaged or disadvantaged. The Xanth delegation arrived first, 6 towering insectoid beings, each standing nearly 8 feet tall with chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed under the artificial lighting. Their ambassador, Kiexthal, possessed mandibles that could crush steel and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. When James walked in, the entire Xanth delegation froze. The soft clinking sound of metal accompanied his every step. As he moved to his seat, 47 knives shifted with him, creating an almost musical symphony of steel. He sat down slowly, deliberately, ensuring every blade was visible to those who looked closely enough. Kiexthal's antennae twitched, a sign of confusion among his kind. "Human James Riley," the translator device rendered his chittering speech. "You appear to be heavily armed. Bladed implements," James replied calmly, pulling out a datapad. "All within the regulations established after the Proxima incident. Would you like to see my clearance documentation?" Aliana wanted to sink into the floor. The Velhari didn't have a word for facepalm, but if they did, she would have invented it in that moment. The Xanth had invited humanity to these negotiations because they believed humans were soft, a young species barely 3 centuries into space travel. They'd planned to offer insultingly low terms for passage rights through their territory, knowing humanity desperately needed those routes. The alternative would add decades to colonization efforts, but now Kiexthal was staring at a human who'd turned himself into a walking armory, without technically violating a single regulation. "This is irregular," Kiexthal finally said. "So is offering a 90% tariff on passage rights when the standard galactic rate is 12%, James replied, not looking up from his datapad. "I reviewed your initial proposal." Quite creative. The chamber fell silent. One of the junior Xanth diplomats clicked their mandibles nervously, a sound like rocks grinding together. James finally looked up, his eyes meeting Kiexthal's compound gaze. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to negotiate a fair passage agreement, something around 15%, maybe 18% if the exclusive clauses you mentioned are genuinely valuable. You're going to agree because you're intelligent beings who understand that humanity, well, new to galactic politics, didn't become Earth's apex. Predator by accident." He slowly pulled out a throwing knife from his sleeve, letting it catch the light. He didn't brandish it or make threats. He simply placed it on the table between them, an unspoken reminder of what humans had been before they reached the stars, what they still were beneath the diplomatic niceties. "My species invented over 15,000 different ways to kill each other before we ever left our homeworld. James continued conversationally. We fought wars that lasted generations. We created weapons that could end all life on our planet, and we were smart enough barely not to use them. We're very, very good at conflict, Ambassador Kexthal, but we're trying to be better. Aliana watched the Xanth delegation with her empathic senses. She could feel their initial predatory confidence evaporating, replaced by something she'd never expected to sense from the notoriously aggressive Xanth. Caution. These knives? James gestured to his arsenal. They're not a threat. They're a resume, a reminder that humanity would really prefer to be your trading partners rather than demonstrate why Earth's history is so colorful. Kexthal's antennae went completely, still the Xanth equivalent of deep thought. The chamber remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the Xanth ambassador leaned forward. You carried 47 knives to a diplomatic negotiation to make a point about preferring peace? I carried 47 knives because it's the maximum number I could comfortably wear while still maintaining diplomatic decorum, James corrected. The point about preferring peace is just a bonus. For the first time in recorded history, a Xanth ambassador produced the clicking, chittering sound that served as their laughter. I believe, Kexthal said, his tone notably warmer, that a 16% tariff would be acceptable, with mutual defense considerations should either of our species encounter hostilities in the corridor. James smiled and stood, extending his hand, another knife clinking into place as he moved. That sounds remarkably reasonable, Ambassador. As the Xanth delegation filed out 3 hours later, after surprisingly productive negotiations, Aliana approached James with disbelief written across her features. That was the most reckless, insane, aggressive display of passive-aggressive intimidation I've ever witnessed, she said. James shrugged, removing knives and placing them in a secure case. Humanity learned a long time ago that the best way to avoid a fight is to make sure everyone knows you'd be really good at it if it came to that. The Xanth respect strength. I just spoke their language. With 47 knives. With 47 knives, James agreed cheerfully. And not a single projectile among them. Aliana shook her head, but she couldn't suppress the small smile tugging at her lips. Humans were absolutely mad, but perhaps, she thought, that madness was exactly what the galaxy needed. Someone willing to carry 47 knives to a negotiation just to prove they'd rather not use any of them. That, she decided, was very HFY indeed.